11:30, we'll go ahead and get this MPO Executive Committee meeting called to order. I believe we do have quorum, so appreciate everybody taking time to be present here today. Our first item is a vote on the approval of the agenda.
Second.
By Joaquin, second by Winter Heights. Any discussion on the agenda?
I just want to point out the auditor might be a little late getting on, so we might.
He's actually
there. Okay, great. Never mind.
Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Agenda is approved. Up next, we have the vote approval of November meeting minutes.
Approval.
Second.
Moved by Pleasant Hill, second by Joaquin. Any discussion or corrections required on the meeting minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Thank you. Meeting minutes are approved. Up next, we have our consent and vote agenda. We entertain a motion to approve that. Moved by Windsor Heights, seconded by Joaquin. Any discussion or questions regarding the financial statement or water trail change order? Hearing none, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Consent agenda is approved. Up next, we have a report and discussion on the fiscal year 2024 audit.
Yeah, I can kick this off. As you know, we have Denman to do our audit. The finance subcommittee was supposed to meet yesterday and hear a presentation, but a lot of our finance folks couldn't make it. So rather than having you here twice, everyone's hearing it for the first time today. Ron and I had a chance to sit down with them last week and go through this as well. I think you'll see that there are improvements from last time. There's one finding that we know what to do with it. So that should be coming off, but otherwise it was a very clean audit. I'll turn it over to, I don't know if you have Joe or Dave to walk us through.
All right, thank you, Dylan. Joe Sparks might jump on. He's in another conference call presenting a different audit. So if he gets done with that, he'll jump on and join us. But yeah, I'm going to start. It's a preliminary draft of the audit that we're going over today. But these are the final numbers, and our audit opinion will not change on these financial statements. On page 3 of the report is our independent auditors report. We are expressing an unmodified or a clean opinion on these financial statements, meaning they're fairly stated in all material respects in accordance with accounting principles generally accepted in the United States of America. We did conduct the audit in accordance with generally accepted auditing standards in the United States of America, and also in accordance with government auditing standards issued by the Comptroller General of the United States. We are required to be independent of the MPO in order to do the audit, and we believe we are in compliance with that independent standard. The financial statements are the responsibility of management. Our responsibilities are on page 4. One of the items there is to obtain an understanding of internal control in order to design our audit procedures. We do not express an opinion on internal control, but if there are items that need to be communicated, material weakness or significant deficiencies, we will communicate those to you, and that is in a separate report at the back of the financial statements. So I'll touch on that a little bit later. I'm going to skip over to page 12 of the financial statements, which is your statement of net position. Your total current assets at the end of June 30, 2024 was about $3.8 million. The cash and pool investments about $2.2 million. That's up $195,000 from the prior year. Accounts receivables $463,000. That's up $442,000 from the prior year. The biggest change in your assets was your I would do from governmental units, Iowa Department of Transportation. That receivable is actually down about $2.9 million. That was due to the water trails project, obviously just the timing of when that was going on. So your total assets were actually down this year about $2 million to $4.4 million of total assets. Total liabilities were also down about $1.7 million. Accounts payable were down about $1.6 million, and you got $530,000. Again, that was due to some payables due on that water trails project in the prior year that were not outstanding at the end of this year. Your unearned revenue is about $1.4 million. That's similar to the prior year. That's amounts due back to Icon once that Water Trails project is completed there. So your total liabilities, like I said, was down $1.7 million. So your total net position at the end of the year finished about $1.6 million, which is a decrease of about 139,000 from the prior year. On page 13 is your statement of activities. Your total expenses were up for the current year about $4.3 million. Of that, $150,000 increase in US DOT program cost, about a $4 million increase in your water trails project, and about $79,000 increase in your regional planning costs make up that $4.3 million increase. Total operating grants and contributions and restricted interest was $11.7 million. That was an increase of $4.1 million. Is a $2.6 million increase in federal highway administration, with water trails project, again, a $2.6 million, and then $1.4 million in water trails grants and contributions. So the majority of that increase is all related to your water trails project. Your unrestricted investment earnings did go up $26,000, so you are getting a little bit more on your investments there. So again, change in net position this year about a negative $138,000. On page 14 is the balance sheet, governmental fund. It's very similar to the statement of net position I've already gone over, so I'm not going to touch on those numbers. On page 16, Exhibit E is your statement of revenues, expenditures, and changes in fund balance. Again, total revenues about $12.3 million. That's an increase of $3.6 million. Again, your water trails project, $6.5 million of intergovernmental federal revenue, plus the $3.9 million water trails and grants and contributions make up the majority of those total revenues. Expenditures, $12.8 million this year, about a $4.2 million increase. Obviously, majority of that's in your water trails project. $10.4 million is a $4 million increase from the prior year. So in this change in fund balance is a $471,000 decrease. The difference between those two statement of activities and this statement of revenues, expenditures, and change in the fund balance is kind of explained on the next page. There's a lot of adjustments. The Exhibit E is based on modified accrual basis accounting. The other statement is based on full accrual accounting, and so some things just aren't on both of those financial statements. Starting on page 18 is your notes to the financial statements. No significant changes in your accounting policies in the current year, so those should be very similar to the prior year as far as those types of disclosures. I'm going to skip over to page 23, and your capital assets are in note 3. Just gives a little detail on what happened in capital assets. No major changes there. You did have $137,000 of depreciation in the current year, so the decrease in capital assets about $128,000. Down below that is your long-term liabilities went down. Changes there. The lease agreements payable was down $113,000. And then it shows your change in your compensated absences in your net pension liability for the year. I'm going to skip back to page 30, your budgetary comparison. You were in compliance with your budget. You did not exceed your budget this year, so there's no comments related to that, but just a kind of a comparison there of actual to budget. No major items to identify there. And then I'm going back to your scheduled expenditures of federal awards on page 37, schedule 2. So your total federal awards for the year was $7.8 million. 6.5 was the National Infrastructure Investments Grant, which we considered a major program this year, and that would have been one of the programs that we tested. We also tested the highway planning and construction program, that $976,000. We do have some findings in a separate audit report I'll touch on just shortly. So on page 38 is our independent audit report on internal control and compliance related to a audit in accordance with government auditing standards. On internal control, we did identify one deficiency and one material weakness in internal control that's identified as item 2024-001 on page 44. The deficiency relates to, as we conducted the audit, we had significant audit adjustments related to, again, the Water Trails Program project. Just the receivables and payables at year end, those are kind of confusing. It's a different type of grant than others, but anything that has happened obviously before June 30th should be recorded as a receivable and the offsetting payable. So those were the major adjustments that we had in the current year. And since they were material to the financial statements, we do have to consider that a material weakness and disclose that to you as part of the audit process. We did not identify any non-compliance items as related to our government auditing standard report, so no issues with your compliance there. On page 40 through 42 is our independent audit report on compliance over each major federal program. Again, compliance with the federal programs, we did not identify any question costs or any compliance issues with the federal program. We did have that material weakness did kind of go over into the federal programs, so we disclosed that as a material weakness over your federal programs because there were expenditures that were not included in the financial statements as part of that. So we did identify that as a material weakness also related to your federal programs. So on page 43 is kind of a summary of our independent auditors results. Again, unmodified opinion on the financial statements, material weakness over both your federal program and your internal control over financial reporting, but no compliance issues. So as Dylan mentioned, it is a fairly clean audit, just that one item related to the receivables and payables. We did not encounter any difficulties in performing the audit. No major issues getting through the information from client, from staff and that. So we really appreciate that. Fairly quick presentation. I'll open up for questions or comments.
Best comment. One, I see we've made great strides, quite frankly, over previous 2 or 3 audits that I've been involved in review. And I really want to thank staff for the work that they've done there. I am concerned about the Water Trails piece. And I know we've entered into a contract with I believe it's a CPA. How often will we engage them and hopefully catch this issue so the next audit is better?
Rhonda might have better insight to how often we engage with them quarterly.
It's quarterly right now, yes. He will do all of the journal entries. So other than that, he checks it quarterly, and we kind of just figured out what the issue was with the Water Trails. I don't proceed when those deposits are coming and have an invoice like I do for all of the MPO, and having both those books meshed together, that's where it's up. So we're going to do invoices prior to the funding coming in, and that should clean that up.
Basically, we got invoices, or we had stuff that we paid it out at the end of the fiscal year, and then we didn't get the payments back until the next fiscal year, and those should have been better reconciled. That's
pre-recorded, yeah. They
right.
should have been pre-recorded in last year.
As revenue too.
As revenue.
Yeah. So we know what it is, we know how to fix it.
So a little more coordination with Water Trails as well on
Yes.
I think
the bigger chase.
people financial there too.
Yeah, there's just been a lot of turnover with all of it. So.
Big hits, yeah. They shored up some of that, I think it sounds like, so.
I mean, I don't want that to overshadow the
Exactly.
progress we've made.
Yeah, the
This is
segregation,
something I am concerned about and hope we can get fully corrected by that.
yes, definitely. And to your point, the segregation of duties, which has been a finding for years, wasn't on this time. So that was good. That was nice to see.
Anything else? All right, thank you for the presentation. It's always great to hear compliance with the audit and also pretty much a clean audit.
I want to thank Dave too. If you don't know, Dave is retiring, so this might have been his last presentation to the MPO. So I want to thank you for all you've done for the organization over time as well, Dave. And good luck in the future.
Thank you. Yes, this is planning. I'm planning on this being my last presentation to probably about any board or commission, but we'll see. Maybe some next year. I'll be around most of next year, but I appreciate working with the MPO over the last 5 years and all the input you've given me. So I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right, thank you.
And the audit will be back for the policy meeting in January for approval. So the finance subcommittee will have a chance to talk a little bit more if we need to.
All right, moving on. We have our regional safe streets for all implementation grant application. John, what you got?
Did a workshop last week with our transportation technical committee and want to get you up to speed on the new artwork. Give you a little background on where we're headed with Safe Streets for All. The background of this, as you all know, is the MPO is developing a comprehensive safety action plan on behalf of the region. That will then make all the jurisdictions of the region eligible for funding. And so we are now we're under contract with a consultant to develop this plan. And then as part of that contract, they're also going to develop a regional application for funding as part of the next round of eligible funding. So we're at the stage where we're starting to conceptualize what an application could look like. There are millions and millions of dollars of need, and we have a limited amount of money that we can go after. And so this needs to be a robust process, and that's what we started last week with our transportation technical committee. So went through a series of exercises, and I'll talk about them very briefly. This map, which you may have seen when you came in today, is a result of a series of inputs. The first round of inputs was all the work that went into the comprehensive safety action plan. It's hard to see here, but the dark lines on the map indicate those places where the total weighted scores suggested where we should focus our treatments and our investments. And then we sent that to our jurisdictions, to our technical committee members, and they highlighted the areas within their jurisdictions where they'd like to see investment that made sense based on what they know of the local system. And then that was put on in front of our technical committee, and they were asked to vote with their stickers in places that were not their jurisdiction. And that kind of helped us develop this heat map of potential locations. This isn't the end of the process. The other piece that we did was those series of pictures right there. Those depict different types of treatments that could be applied across the region, or more systemic type treatments. We also asked them to vote on the things that they think would be low investment, high impact in order to really get the most bang for the buck as part of an application. So you're welcome to take a look at those more deeply. For today, we just wanted to get you up to speed on where we're at with this process. I want to acknowledge some of the challenges that we have going into this. That is, we're working with a plan that is most of the way complete in process. We're happy with the progress, but it's still in development, so we don't have it totally buttoned up yet. We also have a tight timeline. We're assuming that the next NOFO is going to drop in February. That's based on our assumption that it's going to drop this next year, at the same time it did last year. We're also working under the guidelines provided in the 2024 NOFO. Because we don't know what the new NOFO is going to say. It's potential that the administration could change it. But it is the best information that we have to go on, and so those are the assumptions that we've chosen to work within. So our goals for the workshop last week were to get some broad direction on where we want to head and start to get support for what we would include in our regional application. Okay, there we go. So some of the key findings that we took away from the workshop is that there was support for a hybrid approach. What I mean by that is how we spread the peanut butter. We could just do systematic treatments that are real superficial across the entire metro, or you could concentrate it on a few really large projects. That's kind of the two extremes of the scenario. And the hybrid approach is to say, well, let's find some systemic approaches that we can apply across the region, as well as a few corridors where we can focus investment. So there's consensus on that hybrid approach. There is support for focusing on protecting the most vulnerable users, so pedestrians, bicyclists. They're one of the leading, they're disproportionate number of fatalities and serious injuries. And then they also started to identify some of those corridors for potential focus. So next steps from here, we need to continue to finalize the plan, obviously. And where the consultants are working or focusing right now is analyzing the results of that workshop to see if there's common treatments that we can then come back with and say, here are some themes that we can approach. I will mention that one of the themes that has risen to the top so far is proximity to schools. That received a lot of weight in the initial scoring, and that kind of reemerged yesterday. And so if you were to look at these maps, there's Southeast Polk, you have another school here, out on Grand there. There's several institutions of learning with proximity to these projects. We see that as an early theme. It seems to have some momentum. So you'll be hearing from us again soon as that recommendation starts to take shape. I'll pause here and see if there's any questions. Sorry, go ahead.
Good luck. How much what is the potential? Based on what we know now, knowing that we might not have any, but.
Based on, so again, the best we have to go on is the last NOFO. And in there was a cap of $25 million with a maximum of 20/80 split. So if you did 20/80 split, you're looking at $31.25 million application or total project costs. I think what does bear some conversations with our jurisdictions, we don't have to do a 20% match, we can do a 50% match. And so now we're looking at $50 million spread out. And it really comes down to what the jurisdictions would, would you like to have 50% off more projects or 80% off fewer projects? That's kind of how I think about it. So that's an ongoing conversation. But again, our assumption is $25 million maximum ask.
Still seems a little backwards to me that our consultant should have been a little further ahead with this. And I think in our original timeline with them was supposed to be more data available before these meetings took place, where they could lay out, quite frankly, some strategies and, a little more information to make this group that was meeting, the tech committee, a little more informed about a direction. So that now we're basically identifying projects and then going to identify the strategies seems backwards to me, again.
The challenge with that is taking something very regional, and we don't want to get into the point where we are telling you what to do. So we want to make sure that there's kind of that give and take. So here's some data. Let's talk about what you think. You can kind of meet somewhere in the middle. Yeah, there's probably more we could have done to set up. Here's what the data has pointed us to. Let's limit ourselves to that. We got there in the meeting. It didn't start quite that way, but we got there in the end. But the idea all along was we're going to give you a toolbox of tools of treatment types that then if you want to, you can apply that. For the application, yeah, we do have to narrow that down and identify some specific things. But for everything else, we're not going to say on each individual section, here's what you should do. It's going to say, here's a range of options.
Good, because I would like to see that be as broad as possible. And there are some things that could probably impact the entire area. I don't know how a grant application would come forward from, say, the highway helpers. We have 3 trucks that patrol the metro that go through basically every community. And we have debris dumped on the roadway every day. Somebody loses a load. We have retread tires in the middle lanes, and we have people physically walking out into that traffic trying to remove that material. If we could equip those 3 trucks with those debris removing blades that also would function as a push bumper, that they could go out and capture that stuff and move it off the site without physically having to walk into the lane. I think that's important and benefits everybody, and quite frankly, is a low dollar piece. But how do they fit into the system? How do they make an application? Would that be supported by this group?
Sounds like some supported by our cities.
Or the
Support-
DOT.
DOT, yeah.
Well,
It
the
really
big
doesn't
thing
belong
is-
to that.
My opinion is it keeps our responders from physically having to go out and do that because they get the 911 call on
Right,
here's the
but I-
mess, here's the potential accident, and we're risking our own people. Or the accident happens and then we've got our responders out there in that environment.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it seems like two different issues, but
Well, it's, what is an exercise with our tech committee? We're also gonna be talking about bike ped committee. We'll talk to other, there's other, and that was raised in the tech committee too, is we're talking very much infrastructure focused things. There's policy related things. There's things we go out from a legal perspective.
how do you know?
Pushing for a helmet law or something like that if we wanted to. So there's a lot of options. There's a lot of
Why
options.
you build a new high school on it?
Yeah, just a quick comment. I thought that the discussion by the city of Des Moines engineer and your guys' successful grant application and those things that came out of that, why it was successful, I thought that was extremely helpful and instructive on our approach to here. So I totally understand what you're saying, Len, but I think that perspective helped us to kind of work backwards into what our application is going to look like. Hopefully, it's going to set us up for more success in the future, hopefully.
Yeah, like what Gavin noted, there seems to be a theme around schools, and that seems to be something across all the boundaries of our communities.
Yeah.
That's where the theme, and that's where we want to start out. It keep out natural, as opposed to being
Forced it.
I love the focus.
Steve did present that tech to see the conversation.
Anything else? Moving on to other non-action items of interest.
Yeah, I'll walk through a couple of things here. Go to the next slide. I want to give you a heads up and kind of a look ahead, a preview of what we'll be doing over the next several months. One big thing that we'll be tackling is our annual work program. And as we've discussed through the governance process and the human capital plan, our strategic plan is 5, 6, 7 years old by this point. So I think there's an opportunity to merge those two things, update our strategic plan and fold it into the work program process. So we want to start work on that in earnest in January. Walk through here some of the goals that we have, and the next page kind of shows an outline of maybe more month by month of what we anticipate coming your way. But we want to do things a little bit differently. Our traditional work program process is, we can develop this, we bring it to you, we kind of get a, yep, that looks good. Without a lot of engagement with the board, to be quite honest. So we want to make sure that there is that engagement. That's what we've been working towards as the last several months as we go through that governance process. So there'll be a movement to look at our mission, vision, values, those sorts of things you might expect. We also just completed the regional transportation plan. So what is our role in advancing that regional transportation? Start identifying what do we actually do, because it's 20 communities with hundreds of projects. What do we want to really focus on? We also need to make sure there's value to our members and make sure there's responsive to them. Then we get into how do we identify the work. So that's, we talked a lot about committees, there's consultants, there's other things like that. Looking at operational efficiencies. So do we have the right tools? Do we have the right space? Do we have the right technology? All of those kind of things. And we also need to make sure we're complying with all the federal requirements for us. Next slide. This starts to outline where we see having those conversations as we go month by month. So we'll start out talking about mission and vision. We'll start to introduce some of these topics. Some of these will come back months later. Some of them will just keep building off each other. We want to keep this pretty high level in terms of who's having the conversations. Keep this mostly at the policy committee. There might be times when we need to spin off and form a little working to really flesh something out. The finance subcommittee will have a role in the budget process and so forth. But that's kind of what we're thinking. One concept I want to get planted right now is this idea of what I call their wildly important projects, or WIPs. If we look at the MPO, there's things that we are required to do. They're federal requirements and they're just givens. But we have this idea of how do we allocate our time? We have a certain amount of budget, we have a certain amount of staff, a certain amount of capacity with all of you and how much we meet. There's things we have to do, but then there's this remainder. How do we use that time? And my thought is, rather than try to be everything to everybody and use that term, spread the peanut butter around, be a mile wide and an inch deep, let's find a couple of things that we're really driving at that points true north, that everything we do is focused around how do we advance whatever that is. So there's a lot of options that can take too. We need to start thinking about what that looks like. anyway, that's, I think, fairly self-explanatory. We're exploring, you know, how do we facilitate all of this, but that's the approach right now. I would ask if there's anything right now that you're seeing that from that, anything that you're thinking of as we start to work through this process, questions we need to ask ourselves, or what success will look like as we go through this process. That would be great to know, whether you can share now or share offline. We can make sure that we include that in the process as we go forward. Next thing, I'm sad to announce that Z will be leaving us at the end of the year. Z's been with us for 5.5 years or so, and it'll be a big loss, but we wish him well in his future endeavors. So we stay in the Metro. So hopefully we'll still see him around. We'll make announcements on what we're doing to fill that vacancy later on, probably in January. I also want to recognize Mayor Elrod. I didn't do this last month, and I should have, but he was recognized as the APA Iowa's planning applicant. The award was awarded in Sioux City back in October. So I want to thank him for all he's done for the field of planning. And then one follow-up from our last meeting, we've been getting some feedback over the last couple of meetings that our AD just isn't cutting it. People are having a hard time hearing if you're online participating. Tom Haddon heard that and said, hey, I'll just provide my staff resource too. So West Des Moines staff came in here, helped us look at what we need, gave us some recommendations. That was really, really helpful. I don't know if West Des Moines here, but I want to thank them for the support they've given. Probably next time we meet, we'll see an improved system in here that will alleviate, we hope, all those concerns and feedback that we've gotten. I don't know if you have anything else. I think that might be it. I just want to thank you too as we end the year. Thank you for a great year. I know we've been through a lot this year and in previous years. I know some folks, we're going to start seeing turnover in terms of MPO reps, exec reps, so I'm not sure where all that lands, but just in case it's the last time we see you at this table, I want to thank you all for everything you've done for us.
Did the committee have anything they wanted to discuss?
Everybody have thanks for what you've done. So bring us all around. I don't know what you guys do, all of your staff, and congratulations wherever you're going. Glad you're staying in the metro area. Thanks for the work you did.
Our next meeting's on Thursday, January 9th, 2025, 11:30. And nothing else coming for us. We are adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.